Welcome everybody to CALLOUS Invitational 4 Grand Finals. Live narration here. The Linear Curve against Undisputed. This is the set one out of potentially two sets. Linear has been here 3 times. This is his third appearance. He won the original CALLOUS Invitational Tour, came in second in the second tour, and then had an uncharacteristic and unexpected 1-2 exit last year. He has rallied all the way back, and he is once again, after an early loss to UD, rallied all the way back to the Grand Finals, as we've seen him do. Here he is for the third appearance. Undisputed has played in all 4 of these CALLOUS Invitational tournaments. He has never made money in them before, but he is the odds-on favorite to be the champion in this. He has the huge advantage despite the colossal opponent in Linear on the other side. He has the massive advantage of being in the upper bracket. So Linear would have to win this best of 5 and another best of 5 to come in order to win his second CALLOUS Invitational title. Undisputed merely needs to beat Linear, not that that's an easy task by any means, one time in a best of 5. And after a fairly quick start, we have a pretty early pause. On turn 4, both of them stopping to hesitate. They both have Skarm. It is Skarm Bliss for Linear, very well might be for Undisputed as well, both going with very standard and safe teams. Linear in particular has led with Skarmory multiple times throughout this tournament. He has not been afraid of the mag. All sorts of things that can go wrong. He could have YOLO Skarm. He could have Dugtrio in the back. Plenty of things, but a lot of his teams have been tempo-oriented, and his biggest focus has been simply establishing those spikes. Did somebody click here? Somebody was supposed to tag matches. Yeah, they did. I'm just making sure. We got a lot of stuff going on at the moment, but let's not get too far away from this. We have Jirachi coming in here, going for the dynamic punch, which obviously with the 50-50 accuracy, not the most reliable thing in the world. It does get protected against. He's going to switch it up on the switch, go for fire punch. That would be a free burn opportunity, and he's going to switch it up again here for HP Grass, aimed at Swampert, but good scouting from Undisputed. We now know 3 out of the 4 moves for what is some kind of mixed Rachi. Dynamic punch, fire punch, and HP Grass we've seen. Very standard so far for Undisputed. Looks like just a big 5 team of old. Hasn't shown us anything fancy. Linear, it's a little bit less clear. Very well might be just a slightly varied TSS team for him as well. But Undy is looking all right now. Nothing seriously banged up. He's got the spike down. Everybody seems to be relatively stable and in control, and also the mixed Rachi set, as dangerous as it is, becomes a lot less dangerous when the set is known. So Undisputed with really good scouting there. Didn't take too much damage. He could have easily gotten his Swampert nailed by HP Grass, or gotten something burnt, the T-Tower burnt or whatever, with the fire punch. A lot of bad things can happen with mixed Rachi. But none of that occurred, and Undisputed largely knows what the set is now without taking too heavy casualties. So I think that mixed Rachi is going to be a lot less effective than it otherwise could have been. Will-O-Wisp coming down. It is now Skarm Bliss confirmed for both players. And a Roar is going to drag out Undisputed's last Pokemon that he was probably trying to keep hidden in the back. But it's going to get roared out. 1 in 5 chance of it being that Pokemon. It is Aerodactyl, so we are looking at pretty close to a big 5 TSS here. Arrow is not the standard last Mon, but it's not uncommon either. And it's going to suffice just fine on this aggressive, finisher-heavy TSS team that Undisputed opted to bring. Unclear what Linear has here. This is kind of like a 2017 top-of-the-ladder-esque Superman TSS hybrid, I believe. And I believe the last poke is going to be T-Tower for Linear. He's got the double rock resist in the Rachi and the Flygon. And then he's got the Skarm Bliss core. He doesn't need a spinner. 3 of his pokes are Spikes immune. I do believe it's just going to be T-Tower back for Linear. This is a lot like something that Bad Dummy, I'm Rick Isley, would have run during that time when he was around the top of the ladder. We will see if it is indeed something like that, but that is the way that it looks to me. And I know Linear back in the day ran this archetype a pretty good amount as well. So we know now that spikes are not going to be removable for linear. I'm very confident it's not a last poke rapid spinner. So we'll see how many layers Undisputed can accumulate. The Aerodactyl, a potential big threat if he can make predictions. But remember, it's not a bulky Rachi, so should that Rachi get hit with Earthquake, it's going to do severe damage. And Undy here is going to manage to get all 3 layers of spikes up, which, I mean, not the worst thing. 3 of Linear's pokes are immune, but it's going to matter for sure throughout the game. And like I said, I think that Rachi is going to have very limited windows in which it can do its thing and be effective before, between the chip damage and the spikes, it does just get killed. Linear here is going to call the Focus Punch for Undisputed that he tries to go for. We see that it's not banded, so we have a lefty's tar here with Focus Punch, which is either a physical subset, a 4 attack set. It could be a Boa-esque set, but I don't think that's the case here, where it would be mixed, like something. It could also be like a New Age Boa, like a substitute, HP Grass, Fire Blast, Focus Punch kind of set. I think the most likely scenario here is either 4 attack T-Tar, all physical, or just 3 attacks plus Roar. Rock Slide here probably rules out any kind of special attack, so like I said, I think we're looking at either 4 attacks or 3 attacks plus Roar. And Focus Punch is going to not get anywhere. Linear continuously calls it with those Seismic Tosses. Rock Slide switches it up, and Linear calls that as well. Goes to Flygon for the resistance, and now the T-Tar almost certainly is going to have to get out of the way of the Stab EQ from what is almost certainly a faster Flygon. Linear maneuvered those turns brilliantly and showed you guys in the audience exactly why he's here. He was correct on every single one of those turns. He Seismic Tossed on all the Focus Punches, predicted the Rock Slide and switched at exactly the right time, and made the right move on the switch in the Rock Slide. So Linear made all 4 of those turns exactly correctly, which is exactly why he's here and you're not. This guy just has the reads very, very accurately, has an uncanny ability to win the prediction wars in these kind of situations. All that being said, Undy's doing just fine here. Other than the Scarm, his team's pretty healthy. He's got the burn on the Zapdos from earlier with Will-O-Wisp from the Gar. He's got the 3 layers of spikes established, and I think he's doing just fine. Anybody's game here. This is only game 1 in a best of 5 for these grand finals. There is Toxic and Soft-Boiled respectively, Bliss on Bliss. Neither one a big threat, but obviously Toxic is a clock that at some point is going to matter and force the Blissey to get out of the way. Undy doesn't seem to have a fantastic switch to Bliss, but I mean, he can just go to his own T-Tar here, or he could fodder the Scarm if he's really worried about it. If he does not have Refresh on his Swampert, which we don't know, it's shown actual nothing other than leftovers, then that has to be careful about the Toxic as well. But if it is a Mono Pert with Refresh, then that is reasonably safe against Blissey. But both of them at the moment suffering from Toxic, so not going to be able to stay in forever for either of them. There's going to have to be a switch at some point, and Undy does get out of the way. And again, Linear calls that, goes Ice Beam when he had been using things other than Ice Beam, nails the Gengar as it comes in, gets instantly rewarded with a 10% freeze, and now Undy might be a little bit behind. It's still a close game. He's got the spikes advantage, certainly, but that freeze definitely matters if Gengar does not thaw, and he's only going to have a couple of opportunities to do that when he is sitting at that precarious 48%. Now, granted, Blissey can't stay in too much longer either. The Toxic beginning to add up. Next one going to do 18% here, and also, we have to note that Blissey, when it comes back in, is going to step on the 3 layers of spikes, so he's not going to be able to keep that Bliss in too much longer. Probably thinking about how he wants to respond to the Gengar here. If Gengar stays in and thaws, there are some really bad things that can happen here. Like, for example, if Linear thinks this is a great opportunity to get the Zapdos in or to get the Rachi in, and all of a sudden Gengar thaws and goes for, like, Ice Punch or Fire Punch or, hell, even, like, Will-O-Wisp on the Rachi, lot of bad things that can happen here, and it's Linear taking the time. He's down to 20 seconds on his clock here. Linear, for those who don't know, is an experienced, very high-level international chess player, so he's very, very used to the pressure and the utilization of a chess clock. No way in hell Linear is going to time out. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's one of the best time managers in all of competitive Pokemon. That being said, there is an insta-thaw from the Zapdos, from the Gengar rather, ice punching Zapdos on the Switch. That's poor for Linear, and it's going to force a rest that Undisputed did not know that he had. And one Sleep Turn going to be killed. Roar comes down. Here's Flygon. It's shown only Rock Slide, but obviously we know it's going to have Earthquake somewhere. So we know two of the moves here. He's now going to show Protect, and that's going to be another Roar attempt for Undisputed. So it's going to be free lefties for what can only be assumed to be a relatively bulky Flygon. Unlucky Rock Slide miss. Roar, however, is going to drag out Zapdos, which is probably the best target from Linear's perspective to have been dragged out. He's going to kill a second Sleep Turn, and it is not Last Poke Tyranitar. It is Last Poke Gengar for Linear, so he actually has 4 Spikes immunities. And he is now going to begin attacking the Skarmory. He's going to go straight for Thunderbolt here. That's going to be protected against. Swampert comes in at this point. Again, Linear with the exactly correct play in the prediction game. He goes for Will-O-Wisp, catching Swampert on the Switch. Does the Gengar have a Grass attack? Does Swampert have Refresh? Either way, Skarm comes in. Going to go for Surf here. That's going to hit the Skarm on the way in. It's going to be down to 27%. It took 29 before. Very well may not survive another Surf should he go for that. And he does, in fact, take another Surf. He gets a Spike down. And that's going to be the first knockout of our grand finals with Linear's lead Skarmory taking the fall. Going to be a 6-5 lead for Undisputed. Jirachi, we know, has Hidden Power Grass. Here it comes. No bluff, no prediction. Straight for the HP Grass. Undisputed out of the way. Will-O-Wisp instantly Lumberied away. Fire Punch. Will that be enough with the sand? No. Gengar is going to hang on by the skin of its very large teeth. 1% is going to be enough. Leftover is going to keep him alive. It's going to negate the sand. Gengar barely lives, but he misses Will-O-Wisp here. Hidden Power, even though it's resisted, will be enough. Anything that hit the Gengar at all would have been. And we've got ourselves a tie game here, 5-5, as Undi's Gengar goes down. Neither player opting to bring a Rapid Spinner, even though they both opted to bring Spikes. So they're going to have to deal with the 3 layers and 1 layer that are down, respectively. Undisputed at this point, figuring out how he wants to respond to this mixed Rachi. Haven't seen the last move. D-Punch, Fire Punch, HP Grass, and we don't know the last move, but here's Aerodactyl. If it is last move Thunder or Ice Punch, this gets a little bit tricky here. Earthquaking here is not as straightforward as it looks for Undi. There are 3 immunities on the other side, and indeed he does go for Rock Slide, and Linear stays in again with the correct read. A flinch bails him out, and there's Rock Slide and Body Slam, potentially devastating. There's a 60% para on Aerodactyl, severely crippling that Mon. Way less of a threat after that para kicked in. That is a very poor turn for Undi. He's not able to make the EQ prediction into the Rachi, and the Body Slam para, unlucky RNG for Undi. That's a real bad blow for him. And the game definitely just took a turn in favor of Linear. We now have Flygon against Skarm. It's going to be Rock Slide again. The Skarm difficult for the Flygon to break. Roar is going to prompt out Gengar. Checking on Blissey here for Undi. It's at 67% right now. There is that 1 layer spikes down, which is all Linear is going to be able to get down. He did lose his Skarm as the first knockout. It's a Will-O-Wisp attempt, and that's going to be protected against by the Skarm. Swampert comes in, that's already burned, and Linear finally gets a prediction wrong, going for Will-O-Wisp again. He does not get the attack off on Swampert on the switch-in. He takes this as the opportunity to get his own Blissey in. It's going to come in on Surf. Better hope there's no Earthquake or Focus Punch on the other side, though the damage would be largely negated by the burn. And indeed, Linear's right. It's a safe opportunity for the Bliss to come in and get soft-boiled off. She's going to be back up to 91% as Tyranitar sneaks in for Undisputed. We know that it's physical. We've seen, well, I guess it's mixed, but obviously it's going to be very physically invested here. We've seen at least 2 hard-hitting physical attacks. And Rock Slide is going to get off against the Zapdos here for 77%. It is due to wake up here, but it obviously will not live another Rock Slide. And he's going to stay in and go for the aggressive play. Goes for Thunderbolt. That's going to catch Blissey on the way in, but that's not going to be enough unless he's got a surprise HP Fighting or a Drill Peck, which I could say all but certainly he will not. The Blissey will be able to get a Soft Boiled off and will gain some ground back for Undisputed. Linear has to figure out how he wants to respond to this. Blissey seems like a potentially difficult Pokemon for his team to break. And Bliss on Bliss is where we are again. We know they both have Toxic, so very well they could threaten each other. There's 1 and 2 respectively, but Undy unluckily is going to miss his, so the clock is going to be on his Bliss first. Seismic Toss for lack of something better to do, and the follow-up Toxic will connect. So now both of them are sitting with the poison. Undy on the slightly faster clock at this time. Both of them trying to not give up too much tempo. They're both trying to make aggressive plays and actually attack things when they can. But Linear is going to get a Soft Boiled off here as Skarm comes in. Very likely an incoming Roar here. Linear may attack the Skarm on the way out. Nope, he's going to switch to Zapdos. It is Roar, and that's going to drag the Blissey back out. So this time it's Undy out-predicting Linear. Linear unable to pull the trigger and get some kind of attack off on the way out. Toxic and Soft Boiled respectively, again putting a temporary clock on Blissey, but I don't know how much that matters. Very likely she's going to be roared out here as well. And that's exactly what happens. Seismic Toss and Roar, that's going to prompt out Zapdos. That obviously is going to scare off the Skarm. The answer is, how does Linear want to respond to what is very likely an incoming Blissey? She is at 51%, so if he makes the right prediction, if he can get a crit, if he can make a good read, Undisputed's not comfy going to Blissey here. Doesn't want to risk the crit or the double switch. He's actually going to fodder Swampert instead to get the Blissey in safely. Very disciplined play for Undisputed. I'm having a hard time seeing how Undisputed is going to win this game. Linear might have a hard time breaking through the Bliss, but what are the win cons at this point for Undisputed? Skarm doesn't win the game against the 3 Spikes immune pokes on the other side. Blissey's a great wall, but it's not an offensive threat. And the Aerodactyl, crucially, earlier got paralyzed by that body slam, so I don't see how that can win the game for him either. Undisputed, I think, is going to have to be money with his Tyranitar. He's going to have to make really good predictions with that, and maybe even get some crits in order to win this. But I think very likely Linear is going to take this game 1. T-Tar does come in on the Gengar here. It's at 49% after Spikes and Lefties. Out of the way. Here's Aerodactyl. It's a failed Will-O-Wisp on the already paralyzed Aerodactyl. Gengar might not be able to kill it here from 84%. Undisputed might be thinking to himself that now is a good time to stay in and just go for it and see if you could find a crit. But he sees it differently. He goes to Blissey here. Linear wasn't comfortable with it either. He switched to Flygon. Blissey, we know, has at least Toxic, and it very well may have Ice Beam here. Flygon has to be very careful. His own Blissey comes in. Would have been great for Undy to hit that on the switch with Toxic. Didn't feel comfortable. Didn't want to eat an Earthquake from the Flygon. Went for the safer soft-boiled play, and is now going to Toxic the other Bliss as Linear gets his own soft-boiled off. So now the clock is working against Linear, who's at less health and has the Toxic ticking. Now we have another pause, not for too long. Toxic misses, and Ice Beam for lack of anything better to do. Linear is going to have to at some point switch out of this, so Undisputed gaining a little bit of momentum. He gets Toxic to get some kind of clock on the opposing Blissey, which seems necessary, but Linear taking a beating here as the poison starts to accumulate. Damned if you do, damned if you don't at this moment. She's at 33%, and the 3 layers of spikes are down. And the best she's going to be able to do after soft-boiled is get herself back up to 43%, and that is going to have to suffice. Linear at this point is going to have to either give up his Blissey or get out of the way and find the perfect opportunity later to get her in. Here comes Tyranitar, and there is soft-boiled again for Linear. Man, is that a ballsy play to do that. Most players would not have. And that is going to get him up to 63%. Linear there with an amazing read to maybe save his Blissey that otherwise was in deep trouble. Man, the plays that this guy makes, he really, really shows you how he has made it this far 3 separate times. He just makes these huge plays that require balls of steel that other players would not be able to make. Undisputed getting a crit there. That is definitely what he needs. A couple more of those and he could dig himself back into this game. Fire Blast there, devastating to Gengar, 90%, but it will survive. What will Gengar do now? Blissey on the other side at 82% is a pretty safe switch for Undy unless there is an explosion, and that is a major consideration here. If Undy gets his nurse blown up on, he is in big trouble. So it's a huge turn for Undisputed. Has to figure out, is there a grass attack here? Is it just going to be a Will-O-Wisp? Is it just going to be a Thunderbolt? Or is this Gengar about to explode? He pulls it back to Flygon, and Undisputed pulls the trigger. There is the hidden power. That is going to do neutral damage. Probably grass or bug, it looks like. Rock Slide coming down. 12% all he can do. The Flygon has been walled by the Skarmory all game. Pokes on both sides are getting low. Blissey only at 63. Jirachi at 20. Zapdos at 23. Gengar at 10. Linear, the chess master, is going to have to play like a chess master to find his way out of this game. Going to have to maneuver and get every single piece of value that he can out of his remaining pokes there. Many of them are one hit away from their death. And Undisputed on the other side has to be very careful with his T-Tower that he has no way of healing other than its own leftovers. There is no wish on this Blissey. He's got the paralyzed Aerodactyl, and he's got the Skarm, which is pretty good as a wall and can roar all day, but ultimately 3 out of the remaining 5 pokes for Linear are Spikes immune. We've got ourselves a really, really good Game 1, worthy of the Grand Finals. Can't wait to see how it plays out, but there's a big turn for Linear. Goes for the Thunderbolt, catches the Skarm, down that goes, and Linear furthers his lead. It is now 5-3. Blissey comes in, of course, as the response to the Zapdos. See what he wants to do. It's just going to be rest from the Zapdos and Ice Beam respectively. Undisputed is now fishing for crits or trying to find some way to bring this Zapdos down. Ice Beam again. And he's got one more Sleep Turn to still kill, so there is another opportunity for a really good damage roll or a critical hit here. And it's going to be neither. It's going to come up just short. Zapdos is going to survive at 8%, just 2% after Sam, but that will be good enough. And once again, it's going to opt for rest. And Undisputed is not at any point switching in his Aerodactyl for the Rock Slide, switching in T-Tower for the Rock Slide. He's not going for Soft Boiled. He is keeping it aggressive. Finally, he switches it up and goes to his Tyranitar here. Zapdos still has a Sleep Turn to kill. Not comfortable with the matchup. Out of the way. The problem is the T-Tower we now know is walled for days by this Flygon that not only has protected lefties, but is currently very, very healthy. This seems like a very challenging game for Undisputed to win. I don't see how we can break through the Flygon on the other side. Blissey has Ice Beam, yes, but Linear is never going to allow that to happen to the Flygon, and both the Aerodactyl and the T-Tower are walled forever by this Flygon. The only way that Undy sees himself winning is if he makes a great prediction and catches one of the things that are low, such as the Jirachi, which is effectively dead. It dies to the 3 layers of spikes when it comes in, or the Gengar, or the Zapdos with a perfect prediction. And here comes Aerodactyl sneaking in on the rest. Here's an opportunity for Undy, if the power cooperates, to make a play. Here's Flygon. There's Double Edge, fishing for what would be an amazing crit for Undisputed. But he doesn't find it, and he's only comfortable trying it once. He gets out of the way. There is the Rock Slide. Chipping at the Flygon definitely counts for something. He is going to need to do that. It is by far the most difficult Pokemon for Undisputed to break through in our current game state. Zapdos going to switch in. There is Toxic. Blissey going to be up to 99%. Aerodactyl again switching into the Zapdos. And that's only sleep turn number 1, so again, the Aerodactyl will have an opportunity to make a play here. Flygon switches in, and full power kicks in at a bad time for Undisputed, especially had he clicked Double Edge there again, which would have sent Flygon into the red. Rock Slide again going for the para flinch strategy on the arrow, and again Undisputed is not comfortable with the matchup, gets out of the way, goes to Bliss, and Linear is not able to predict that and get an Earthquake off. Protect for lefties, he absolutely needs all the health he can get on that Flygon. Undy knows it's coming, goes for Soft Boiled, of which he's got 9 of them left, so we're not quite in danger of PP being a factor just yet. And after a brief pause, very brief, it's been a pretty quick game as a whole, Linear is going to go to his Blissey as we approach turn 100. Turn 95 here and roaring to go. We've got a lengthy game 1 in this grand final. Soft-boiled and toxic respectively. Once again, Blissey finds herself against the clock. Aerodactyl comes in on the soft-boiled turn. Again, an opportunity for Undisputed to make a play. Ice Beam comes down. Double Edge comes down. Heavy damage on both of them. Aerodactyl finds itself at 17%, but Blissey finds herself at only 21%, and Linear's going to give up his Blissey. He's going to pull it back. That Blissey is dead the next time it comes into the spike. So even though the scoreboard says that it's 3-5, it is in fact a 3-3 game right now because both the Blissey and the Jirachi are instantly dead. They are dead on arrival the next time they make the switch in. This game is very, very close, and here we are on turn 101. Linear does have the advantage of having the 2 pokes to use as fodder, so he can prevent a soft-boiled or whatever other crucial attack that he needs to by foddering off one of his Pokemon, and that very well may end up mattering in this late game. And Linear does indeed do that now. He gives up one of his fodder pokes, the Bliss, that's going to prevent a soft-boiled on the other side from the opposing Bliss, and he now goes Flygon into a Blissey that he knows has Ice Beam, trying to get the pressure on her. He's got Earthquake. She's burned. She's at 59. He's trying to trade and kill the Bliss here and then take home the rest of the match by finishing off the paralyzed Aerodactyl. And, of course, the only real threat that would be remaining, the non-paralyzed, kind of sort of vaguely healthy Tyranitar for Undisputed. Clearly, he made this play with the intention to Earthquake. And calcs are going on. We have a major pause here in what has been otherwise a pretty well-paced game. Undisputed sees what's going on. He's trying to figure out how much he's going to take from an Earthquake. Should he just Ice Beam here? Should he allow this Earthquake to happen? Does he switch to Aerodactyl here? I mean, he has to just take it, right? I mean, there's no switch. You can't go to Aerodactyl. You just get donked by the Rock Slide. You can't go to T-Tire. You just die to the Earthquake. The only play for Undisputed is to Ice Beam, right? I mean, what can you do? He could try to soft-boiled here and stall him out of Earthquakes. That seems not like a winning play, but I mean, maybe that is the only play. But I think Undisputed here is resigned to clicking Ice Beam. If he had more time to figure it out, maybe that's not the perfect line. But no, it's going to be fodder here from Linear. He's actually going to double fodder to get the Blissey even lower. And now she's at 47% as the Gengar sneaks in. Are we about to see an explosion? Are we about to see a taunt to prevent soft-boiled here? There's the switch. Here comes T-Tar. And it is an explosion, but it doesn't hit Blissey. It hits the Tyranitar with a crit, so down that goes. And that should be it. Flygon here should be able to kill Blissey from 30% with Earthquake without much issue. And that is indeed what happens. A brilliantly played late game by the chess master himself, the Thelinearcurve. Going through the motions here, goes for the Protect, which is absolutely the right play. Might as well get those lefties, but very little chance here for Undisputed at the end. Linear pilots that masterfully, as he often does. What a brilliantly played game top to bottom, especially the late game. Linear showing why he really is the best of the best when it comes to ADV, and why he is by far the most successful player in the history of this tournament. Masterful game 1 for Linear, and Undisputed, who has never played against Linear in a major tournament other than one SPL game several years ago. That is the only history these guys have, is now fully aware of what he is up against and the kind of player, the caliber of player that he is going to have to beat if he wants to be the CALLOUS Invitational 4 champion. Game 1 to Linear, who, by the way, the prediction thread, you guys think that Linear is going to win this set, though some of that could be biased because I think most of us want to see a second set regardless of who wins. But you guys seem to be on the Linear hype train, and if so, you guys are right. He takes game 1, and they are not wasting a lot of time. I'm going to grab a quick drink here. We have game 2 already, but they've yet to make the first move, so let me grab one. Back in action, boys. We have a Metagross lead for Linear, who I switched to the bottom for continuity, and a Salamence lead for Undisputed on the top. These are both Pokemon that did not appear in the previous game for either player, so we have a very different scenario here, and they've clearly opted to bring very different kinds of teams. It is a turn 1 Meteor Mash miss for Linear, unluckily, but it wouldn't have done too much for the Metagross switch in on the other side. Undy seems to have brought a mixed or physical offense here. And for Linear, who the hell knows? But we know that it is a lefties Metagross, obviously. He's going to go for Earthquake here, and that's going to do 68%. Hell of a lot more than the Psychic that Undy went for. And Explosion comes down, and that is not going to kill Magneton here. It's going to do a hell of a lot, but it's not going to kill. So very temporary advantage to Linear as the Salamence comes back in. Whether or not he lets the Magneton go, yet to be determined. He's going to go for Protect. He's going to see Dragon Claw, so he's going to now know that we're looking at a special or a mixed Salamence. Pure Special doesn't super duper exist anymore. It's probably a mixed Mence, but the question for Linear becomes, does he let this go? A lot of the time on these balanced-ish offenses that Linear runs, he runs Milotic, and if that is the case, he should certainly go to the Milotic here as opposed to letting the Magneton go. Milotic is generally one of the best and safest Salamence counters in the game, and certainly against a mixed Mence, the Milotic has more or less nothing to fear. So if he has that, he should go to it. Instead, he goes to Porygon 2 here, which makes some amount of sense, right? I mean, both the Meta and the Magneton hate Dugtrio, and presumably we're looking at things like Heracross in the back, which Linear really likes that poke, has been running it for years, so I think we're probably looking at a Heracross team here for Linear. But yeah, the P2 comes in, takes the Dragon Claw just fine, going to go for Thunder Wave on the switch. Certainly looking like a physical-ish offense to me for Undy, but like I said, could be a mixed offense. We know both the Meta and the Salamence were mixed, so it might be one of those teams that does not have Magneton, and it opts to deal with Skarmory through everything just having an attack to hit it. So whatever, Fire Blast, Thunderbolt, whatever things may have. Lax gets paralyzed on the way in, and Linear has to figure out what to switch in here. It very well might just be his healthy Metagross that he led off with. And again, it is Linear taking the time here, figuring out how to respond, trying to gather whatever information he has gathered at this point, which isn't too much, but can probably gain a lot from a little, can look at some of these damage calcs and try to get an idea of what Undy might do in this situation. He goes for a Body Slam, does not find the Lucky Para, and he's only going to do 14% to the Meta here. This is probably a free Meteor Mash opportunity, but if he wants to get really cute, he could just blow up here and try to take a bulky water down with him, but I don't know that he needs to. I think most of the time you mash here, he does have to be a little bit careful about counter potentially from Lax, so that might be one of his hesitations. I don't think it's wild that Linear goes for a double switch here just to be uber safe. A lot to think about, and again, it's Linear trying to figure it out. Does he switch? Does he mash? Does he boom? I think boom is really loose. I think that that's only good if you happen to hit like a Coon or a high-value target that Undy hasn't even shown yet. Most of the time, it's probably a mash or a switch, would be my guess. And here comes Zapdos, and yeah, I mean, there's Linear, there's Rock Slide, nails that unrevealed Zapdos on the way in. Now, to be fair, that one might not have been as nasty as some of his other reads. That might have just been aimed at the Salamence, and by coincidence, it happened to hit the Zapdos, but it worked out pretty well, and Zapdos will not survive another Rock Slide. It is now going to be on Undy once again to figure out what to do. I mean, he probably just has to switch or Baton Pass out. Is he just going to stay in and Thunderbolt the meta and die to Rock Slide? Looks like the answer is yes. He does exactly that. He goes 39% Thunderbolt and he dies. And Linear furthers his lead here. Now 6-4. To be fair, his Magneton is on its deathbed. It's very banged up, but I think it'd be pretty hard to argue that Linear isn't clearly ahead at this juncture. Here comes Salamence coming in. Maybe that can Fire Blast here. I mean, it's going to have that, right? It's a mixed ment, so Flamethrower or more likely Fire Blast is going to be there. This should prompt some kind of switch for Linear, and it does. And it's going to be a Brick Break there. Undy makes the right read, knows Porygon comes in, takes a shot at it. Hell, maybe I can get a crit, maybe I can get something. He does not find a crit. He finds a rather underwhelming 38% Brick Break, and Porygon 2... I mean, pending Undy staying in and just going for a crit here, Porygon 2 is going to have a free recover here. He's going to go Ice Beam. That's an interesting play. So that's anticipating that the Salamence does, in fact, stay in and get greedy and go for the crit. So Linear makes an aggressive play thinking that Undy's going to make an aggressive play, but Undy does not. So Linear, rarely, but he is human, a rare mistake from Linear there. Misses an opportunity to get the recover off. It's not going to matter too much because he's going to recover on the following turn. Granted, he could have gotten blown up on there, but I don't think that would have been the end of the world. But what this does do is it gives Undisputed some tempo, which Linear does not want. Now the faster Breloom has snuck in against the Porygon 2, and the threat of Spore is immediately front and center for Linear. And then this Breloom can start firing off Focus Punches or whatever it may do. And generally, the kind of team that Linear is running, this offensive team with Magneton and P2 and presumably like Heracross on the back, doesn't have fantastic switches for very heavy hitters such as the Breloom. So this whole sequence maybe could have been avoided if Linear had simply gone for the recover as opposed to the Ice Beam. Undisputed has done a great job to take advantage of this situation. And yeah, I mean, maybe he can get some momentum back here. Something is going to get spored one way or another. Linear not able to predict that it was going to be Spore on that turn, which it didn't always have to be. Would have been better to make his Magneton go to sleep. Instead, he's going to get his previously unrevealed Gyarados put to sleep. And to the shock of no one, there is a Heracross in the back. It's going to double switch in here for Linear. It's going to find itself in against the Lax. Great play for Linear to steal the tempo back. And now Undisputed is going to have to respond to this. See what he's got? We don't know anything about the Heracross. He's going to go for Rock Slide, predicting Salamence. He's going to be wrong, and through the Power Flinch possibility, there's the Fire Blast nailing the Hera. Hera is shown to have lefties, so it is not a Pinch Berry. It could be a subset. It could be a Swords Dance 3 attack set. But we can at least rule out sets such as Reversal. Salamence comes in for the Intimidate. Rock Slide again. Through the Intimidate, it's going to do 44%. Neither player has shown T-Tar thus far. Therefore, things with lefties do in fact have lefties. They're not negated by sand. There is no sand. Salamence should and does scare off the Heracross here with the threat of a fire attack. Porygon 2 comes into the Fire Blast. It does comparable damage to what the Brick Break did. 35% what we're looking at here. The only thing stopping him from just going for Thunder Wave here is the fact that it would be completely wasted on the Lax, which is already paralyzed from earlier. So this might be a Recover or an Ice Beam turn from Linear. The Lax is very safe defensively against the Porygon 2. The Porygon 2 is not a threat, but Linear does have good switches into the Lax, and if Linear's really ahead of his game, he can continuously switch the Heracross in as the Lax comes in, and the Heracross is just a massive issue for Undisputed if Linear does that. And Linear down to 15 seconds here, trying to figure out what to do. Make that 10 seconds here. Stays in, eats a Fire Blast, and decides it's worth it to trade with Salamence. So he eats the blast, goes Ice Beam, and Undisputed in shambles here, down 6 to 3. But he's got the T-Tar. It's not a D-Deer, though. It's going to be Crunch. I don't know that set is going to get him out of this situation. DD-Tar maybe had a shot, but I don't know that Special Tar gets it done. Megahorn does a bazillion, but it does not kill. T-Tar survives at 4%, gets a revenge kill for Fire Blast. All of a sudden, Undy gaining some ground. Will it be enough? Here's Metagross. Is that faster than Tyranitar here? For Linear's sake, it needs to be. Some Metagross these days do sit at 222 for this exact reason. Now, granted, there's no way that the Special Tar from Undisputed is at max speed, so 222 is probably unnecessary in this case. But Metagross does invest a lot in speed these days, and he is faster than the Special Tar. There's the knockout revenge kill. We've got ourselves a 2-4 situation with an unrevealed for Linear. He's going to blow up here on Breloom. Down that goes. Only Lax remaining. We have Lax on Lax. That's the last poke for Linear, and he very well may self-destruct here and send us to a Game 3 with a 2-0 lead. That is exactly what happens. There's the boom. There's the game. And Linear looking unstoppable. Undisputed, one game away from losing his upper bracket advantage. Linear now with a 2-0 series lead in this best of 5. And Undisputed has got to be wondering, man, what do I have to do to beat this guy? I played TSS. I played offense. Neither one worked. What do I need to do to beat this guy? He's so damn good. Linear is so hard to play against. And even for one of ADV's all-time greats, and I mean this in the most sincere way, Undisputed is legit one of the top 5 best players to ever play ADV. This is a very, very strong player, and he is really struggling against possibly the best player to play ADV in Linear. If Linear were to win this whole set, I strongly would advise Undisputed to not play the rest of the best of 5 tonight. I would definitely wait. I would definitely think it over and make the adjustments and come back again next weekend. Tonight doesn't seem to be his night so far. Undisputed, a very experienced tournament player, is not someone who's going to tilt. He's going to keep his composure. He's not sitting there pounding his computer desk right now. But if for whatever reason Linear takes this down, which with a 2-0 lead, you would think he's got a pretty decent chance to do that, Undy absolutely should recognize that it's just not his night and come back next weekend for the second set. But here we are waiting. Now, let's not get too complacent here. Both of our previous grand finals, not last year, but the year 1 and year 2, both of those grand finals went to all 10 games. So it is very, very possible that somebody rattles off 3 in a row and makes a comeback. In fact, that already happened against Linear and CALLOUS Invitational 2. He had the 2-0 lead in the second set of grand finals against Cowboy Dan, and Dan rattled all the way back 3 in a row and beat Linear and robbed Linear of what he was hoping was going to be back-to-back titles, back-to-back first-place finishes. So very, very capable, Undisputed, of making 3 in a row happen, but he's got to start with 1. Let's focus on Game 3, see if we can even get to a Game 4 and a Game 5, and we are now in that Game 3. Again, switching sides for continuity. Linear on the bottom, he's got Hariyama. Undisputed on the top with a Zapdos that became a Metagross of note. It switched, it did not Baton Pass out, so maybe Zapdos doesn't have Baton Pass. Turn 1 Rock Slide for Linear, not going for the more conservative and universally safe knockoff, making a more aggressive play. Rock Slide was aimed to hit the Zapdos, and it's obviously not going to do a lot against the meta, but it does discover that the Metagross is holding lefties. And now Charizard making an appearance in these grand finals. Linear, a lot of variance in his teams. The three teams that he's brought in this set have looked nothing alike. He had a Superman team in Game 1. He had a Heracross physical offense in Game 2. And we are now seeing, I don't know what the hell we're seeing. Hariyama plus Charizard. Those are very, very opposite. Hariyama generally is only on stall teams, whereas Charizard is generally only on the utmost aggressive teams. So I have no clue what we're looking at for Linear. He's such an unpredictable builder, and he really varies the stuff that he brings. So, I mean, this is just another aspect of Linear being Linear and being so hard to play against, because and I'm sure the spectators, and I mean, frankly, probably Undisputed as well, have no clue what the hell we're looking at here. Maybe it's just maybe the Hariyama is designed to make the opponent go, oh, hey, a stall team, but it's actually like a choice bander or a 3 attacker with bulk up or even a 4 attacker. A lot of people don't know this because Hariyama is used defensively so often, and it's got moves like Whirlwind and Knockoff and things like that. But Hariyama's attack stat is actually the same as Machamp's. So, I mean, the thing hits really, really hard. It's not usually used in an offensive way, but this very well may be an offensive team from Linear with an offensive Hariyama, and then, of course, this Charizard here, and, I mean, probably a self-destruct Lax, and just pokes along those lines. We might see mixed sweepers in the back. Really interesting team from Linear. Very hard to predict. He's going to go Fire Blast. He's going to miss. It wouldn't have done too much to Starmie there, but nevertheless, it does miss. And Undisputed not in trouble just yet. He's going to have to figure out how to deal with this Charizard, and his answer is going to be a nice double switch, getting Metagross in on the Lax here. That's going to be a Psychic and a Full Power, respectively. See what he wants to do. It's a mixed gross once again, as he had in one of the previous games. And Psychic is now going to hit Charizard there. So good couple turns for Undy. The Charizard very weak at this point. Fire Blast in Blaze range is going to do a pretty good amount, 50%. But the Starmie takes it well enough. It's not a pinch berry from the Charizard. He is holding lefties, and he gets out of the way. And I really have no clue what this team is. I know that nickname there for the Zapdos, Big Pecker Callous, is absolutely based in fact, but I don't know what the team is. He's got the Hariyama coming in here, and he's got that against the Lax. Hariyama has shown only Rock Slide. Starmie coming in, and Focus Punch 44%. Not bad, but the Starmie pretty bulky and working overtime for Undisputed, tanking everything. Hariyama changes it up to Hidden Power that I would assume is probably Bug, but it could be Ghost. Either way, would have nailed the Starmie there had he stayed in to eat it, but Undisputed knew better and got out of the way. It's going to hit Metagross here, and that should scare off Hariyama, unless we're thinking it as something like Counter. T-Tower switches into Metagross. That's a little bit unusual, but Linear with the read. Meteor Mash would have been devastating there, but he instead got it in on Psychic. Oh, man. These nicknames, though. T-Tar is Callous in the gym. Again, based on fact. What can I say? Linear knows. And here comes the Doug Trio into the T-Tar. There is the Earthquake knockout, and we've got ourselves a 5-5 with that revenge kill. I mean, that part's unrealistic. Callous in the gym would never be defeated, but down it goes. So, 5-5 situation here. Zapdos comes in to the Doug Trio. And in the background, my wife is giving me the googly eyes because she knows that the shredded body is undefeatable. But back to the game at hand, we do have Zapdos and Zapdos here. One of these things is not like the other because one of them has a cool nickname and one doesn't. And one of them is at 51% and the other is perfectly healthy. Undisputed trying to figure out what to do. He does have a pretty good answer to Zapdos in general with the Lax, which is at 100% right now, so that's certainly an option. Not going to go to Starmie here, and not going to go to Dougie. Ah, that's what we're doing here. Hey, another nickname based in fact. I'm loving Linear right now. Thick Club Callous, the Marowak coming in. That's also true. And what a good time. Thunderbolt coming down from the Zapdos here. It's going to blank on the ground type. Marowak is real dangerous here. And Undisputed does not seem to have something like a bulky water in sight. Marowak here, whew, I don't know about all that. Toxic the best thing he can do. And there's the double edge. It does have that same ability as Aerodactyl, the rock head ability, as you can see here on the screen. So he's not going to take recoil. And Starmie is going to be the answer. But man, there are some serious threats. The Starmie, the Marowak, the Charizard and the Marowak is what I meant to say. Starmie comes in, but the Starmie is doing overtime work for Undisputed. That has been his defensive backbone in this game, and the only thing keeping him remotely alive from the very dangerous offensive threats that Linear has brought to the table. What a creative team that he has here, too. He goes Thunder Wave here and is trying to catch a full power, but he does not get it. He is promptly Thunderbolted down, and Linear now with the 5-3 lead is looking damn close to sweeping Undisputed in this first set of the Grand Finals, and that's got to kill you psychologically. Undisputed has got to right now be feeling like, this is not my damn night. Linear is a boss, and what am I going to do to beat this guy? And he's going to have to answer that. He's going to have to make the adjustments and come back next week. This is looking like it's going Linear's way. Undisputed is going to have to make something happen. There's the curse on the full power. That's a great start. Maybe he could set up this curse lax and get something done. Frustration with a crit, also very good. So Undisputed gaining a little bit of ground, but Hariyama very scary here, and Linear still with the 4-3 lead. Cross chop hits, but does not crit. Frustration does a lot. Undisputed here may have to rely on a cross chop miss, which is pretty crappy, but the options are very limited here, and indeed Undisputed goes for it, but does not find it. Lax is down. Dugtrio comes in for the revenge kill. Undisputed better have a damn good last poke in the back. DD Tar, DD Gyra, DD Mence, something that can withstand the onslaught here. And the other problem is that the Lax from Linear, which is at 85%, very well may have self-destruct. So even if it is a D-Deer or a Coon or something like that, it has to be very, very careful about getting blown up on. And there's just not a lot at this point of the game that Undisputed can do to play around that. In fact, he's probably simply checkmated if indeed the Lax does have self-destruct. And I mean, the only way, right, is to just be really aggressive, just attack. Find the crit, find the full power, never let him get the self-destruct off. It's the only play. And it is last poke Coon here, so this is going to have to be a sub-Coon or a Crow Coon or something like that. He's going to have to play really aggressively. It's the only way out of this. If the Lax manages to get a self-destruct off and it doesn't hit a protect or a substitute, then he is absolutely dead to rights. There is the Surf, and presumably it's coming in here to try to self-destruct, so Undy better have substitute, or better have protect, or we're in big trouble here. There is the Surf, and Linear disciplined enough to even scout for those moves, goes for the return, but we're one self-destruct away from a sweep here. Undisputed going to have to find the answer. He goes for the rest. Boom would end it, but it's full power, and he's going to need several more of those. Self-destruct would sweep Undy out of these grand finals, but again, it is return. He's being very, very careful to not self-destruct into the Dugtrio. Full power again. Undisputed walking on very thin ice, but that's all he can do at this point. He wakes up, he surfs. Is it a boom? Yep. And pending a crit, we're done here. Here comes Dugtrio v Marowak. I don't even know that Earthquake crit would be enough. Oh, it certainly would be, but he does not find it. And there is the Earthquake knockout. Dugtrio down. Linear wins, and that is a 3-0 sweep for the Linear Curve. That is going to reset the bracket. We are going to go to a second set, best of 5 for the grand finals to determine the tournament champion. I don't know when they're doing that. I will certainly let you know when they schedule. But that was a one-sided beating in which Linear showed Undisputed both sides of his hand. Undy, like I said, needs to lick his wounds, not play anymore tonight, figure out over the course of the next week how the hell he can beat this guy, and see if he can execute it. But tonight is all Linear. 3-0 in set 1 of the grand finals. We're going to a second set. Whenever that may be, I will see you guys there.